Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we do all of this just for you. We look at life through a biblical lens, and we try to solve all the problems of the world in 2 hours or less. So I'd like to do a little rundown of the things that have occurred this week, things that have popped up in the news that I think are important for us as Christians and maybe others as well to really understand. We understand a little bit about what the Bible calls well, the Bible doesn't call it eschatology. The theologians call it eschatology. It's the doctrine of future things and the players. And if you've watched television, read anything, been to a decent church where they preach this sort, you know who the players are. The players are the Western civilization. The players include Turkey and Russia and Persia, which we call Iran. It includes Egypt. These are the major players. But there's also the Arab world that's in relation to Israel, because Israel is the centerpiece of all that is going to evolve during the Great Tribulation. But here we have a run-up toward it in these days. We heard this week from Israel that the U.S. Department of State has reissued a travel warning for Turkey, especially in the southeastern region near Syria and Iraq. The alert relies on concrete evidence of imminent large-scale terror attacks they expect to be carried out by Kurdish as well as Islamic militants. An Arab intelligence agency received information recently of a gathering in Lebanon where a massive attack on Turkish soil was planned for next month, for October. And as a result, some of the participants have been arrested in Lebanon and others have been arrested in Turkey, adding, quote, some still walk free and in all likelihood will try to carry out the planned attack. Arab countries, however, see all of this shift in a very negative light and may no longer share intelligence with Turkey if this is the way they're going to act, meaning that when they hear of something, they'll actually tell people about it and go and arrest people. Breitbart in Jerusalem has reported that Turkey believes Egypt and the United Arab Emirates have masterminded and funded the coup that they just had in their country. Breitbart Jerusalem also quoted Arab sources saying that Turkey suspected former Palestinian official Mohammed Dalan was the major conspirator. And all of us over here say, so what? Well, so what relates to the final conflict, when Turkey will be aligned with Russia and Iran against the Arabs, and Egypt will be pushing up from the south while Turkey and Russia and Persia are pushing down from the north. This is all important stuff. In Israel itself, we learned this week that temple services could be instituted within a week. At some point, whenever the Sanhedrin decides that they want to do this, it would only take a week to get the services going. How would they do that? Well, they have just recently appointed a high priest. Malachi chapter 2, verse 7 says, for the priest's lips should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of Hashem of hosts. For the priest's lips, the King James Version says, should keep knowledge, and they should keep the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord, of Jehovah of hosts. Last week, Rabbi Baruch Kohen offered the barley sacrifice to God in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem. Kohen has been appointed as high priest by the Sanhedrin, a significant step toward reinstating the temple services. When the Sanhedrin made this startling move, the selection was made as a precaution for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which this year will fall on our October 12. If the political conditions should change, allowing the Jews access to the Temple Mount, they will be required by Torah to bring the sacrifices. Rabbi Kahane is confident that it should happen. Temple service could begin in less than a week. He says we don't need a miraculous occurrence like the sudden appearance of a temple descending from heaven onto the Temple Mount to make this decision relevant. The only obstacle preventing the temple service today is the political issue. If that should suddenly change, as it very well could, we would be required to begin temple services immediately. And they will. That is startling biblical, eschatological information. Here at home, the Barna folks are busy taking polls, and they have told us that only 3% of our teenagers read the Bible daily. Only 3% of our young people read a Bible with any kind of regularity. What does that say about our future? What does that say about our immediate past? What are parents doing? Where are these parents? Where are these churches? Where is Christian America? Down in Cuba, lots going on down there. We flew a commercial airliner into Cuba for the first time in 50 years. Well, the first half of 2016 has seen church demolitions in Cuba gather pace as the government cracked down on the freedom of religion or the freedom of belief in this island nation. Authorities have also begun to confiscate 1,400 Assemblies of God churches that were earmarked for seizure in 2015. The latest report by Christian Solidarity Worldwide details 1,606 separate violations between January and July of 2016. Aren't you glad that we have renewed our relationship with that government? The Pope says human-induced global warming is a sin against God. In his message recently entitled World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, Pope Francis said that human-induced global warming, as well as a loss of biodiversity, are sins against God. Sins which must be atoned for by planting trees, avoiding the use of plastic and paper, and separating refuse. I looked at the picture of the Pope as he was saying these kinds of things, and I wondered about, dropping those extra pounds the Pope is carrying around. Pope looks like he's got about 100 extra pounds he doesn't need and isn't supposed to be carrying. Why are we going to atone for that? A sin against the world. Global warming. What about a sin against your body? The Bible actually talks about stuff like that. Doesn't talk about global warming. Just today we found out that it's official. Mother Teresa is now Saint Teresa. You do know what a saint of the church means, don't you? The simple version is that when the Roman Catholic system, anybody who is designated a saint, and this is not by God, this is by people, is a person who has been judged by the church to have had more grace than was necessary for any human being to get into heaven. And as such, she can bypass purgatory and she can go right to heaven. More than that, she now has extra she can share with the faithful. And so now you can pray to her. Well, we're not really praying to the saints. We're just talking to them. But we're asking them what? We're asking for blessings, spiritual blessings. We're asking for the grace of God to be imparted to us in this particular situation for this need and so forth. that only they can do it because they got all this extra. Who makes up this stuff? It was reported last week, and this is the short version, that Australian officials have confirmed that a 4-year-old child is going through a sex change procedure, despite the warning last month by the American College of Pediatrics that even treatments, much less surgical intervention, can cause sterility and are based on, quote, unscientific gender ideology, end of quote, that violate, quote, the long-standing ethical principle of first do no harm, end of quote. The report said New South Wales provincial government admitted hundreds of other children are being referred to the state's hospitals for gender dysphoria. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they are. The report, entitled Sexuality and Gender, Findings from the Biological, Psychological, and Social Sciences, authored by Dr. Lawrence Meyer and Dr. Paul McHugh, talks about the dangers and the bad science that is behind all of this. The New Atlantis reported 2 of the nation's leading scholars on mental health and sexuality have published a 143-page report combining over 200 peer-reviewed studies in the biological, psychological, and social sciences, painstakingly documented what scientific research shows and does not show about sexuality and gender. And one of those things said there is no proof that people are born homosexual, or that they are born bisexual, or that they are born transgender. Likewise, the belief that gender identity is an innate, fixed human property independent of biological sex, so that a person might be a man trapped in a woman's body or a woman trapped in a man's body, is not supported by scientific evidence. They also went on to say that it's been demonstrated that, quote, only a minority of children who express gender atypical thoughts or behavior will continue to do so into adolescence or adulthood. There's also no evidence that all such children should be encouraged to become transgender, much less subjected to hormone treatments or surgery. And finally, that non-heterosexual and transgender people have higher rates of mental health problems, things like anxiety, depression, suicide, as well as behavioral and social problems like substance abuse, innate partner violence, and so forth than the general population. Discrimination alone does not account for the entire disparity. Our president has announced that beginning November 1st, the internet will be in the hands of the United Nations. That is, unless Congress acts to stop it. When the Obama administration announced its plan to give up U.S. protection of the internet, it promised the United Nations would never take control. But because of the administration's naivete or arrogance, UN control is the likely result if the U.S. gives up internet stewardship as planned at midnight on September 30th. Currently, ICANN, the independent private company that runs this thing, does so under the auspices, the authority of our Congress. And that's for facilitating their operation, not controlling what they do. But in the future, a private committee operating either alone or under UN authority would be the ones controlling URLs and how you get and what you get and how often and all the rest of it. It's a wonderful new world. And we have a government that believes in globalism on every single level. How's it working out for you? I ran into an article this week that shocked me. I am shocked, I tell you. You know what it said? Divorce rates double when people start watching pornography. There's a real shock. We got to do a study to find this out. The oft-quoted rule on the internet is, if it exists, there is a porn of it. There's a porn version. even if it's an exaggeration, there's no question that men and women have been consuming more sexually explicit content since the world went online. And not just men and women, children. Young people are into this sort of thing. The study, a working paper presented this week at the 2016 American Sociological Association's annual meeting, suggests that men and women who begin to consume pornography partway through their marriages are more likely to get a divorce than their non-porn consuming peers. That comes under the heading of "The Sun Comes Up in the East." Who knew? And what about the children? The media wants us to be upset at the plight of children caught in the proverbial and actual crossfire in many countries in the Middle East. Refugees from North Africa crowding into small boats to cross the Mediterranean into Italy. We saw again this week the picture of the lifeless body of this child there on the shore. I believe it was in Italy. Refugees from North Africa crowding into these small boats to cross the Med. Refugees from Syria and Iraq, etc., marching across Turkey and then loading into boats to cross into Greece. Refugees caught in the international struggle between mercy and reality. Children suffering and dying throughout the Mediterranean region. And we must do something. I got a question. Are all the children in your family being cared for? Are none of them suffering from absentee parents? Parents who drink or do drugs? Parents who consign them to strangers at 6 months of age for 30 to 50 hours a week while they go off and pursue the American dream? Children who are left to immerse themselves in the spiritually, morally, and socially destructive world of the internet, social media. Children who do not have enough to eat or enough of the right things to eat. Children who are being allowed to grow up without proper training. We, you, me, Americans are not responsible for the children on the other side of the world. We are not responsible for the children down the street. Why are we suddenly expected to be responsible for all of the misused and mistreated children of the world? I know we understand personal responsibility. If it's next door, if you know about it and you can do something. But we apparently are not that understanding when it comes to national or international issues. Why do you suppose that is? Well, because all these people want is money. And Western governments have money. That's why they put the ads on and they push us. Eastern, Oriental governments, they don't care, and nobody's pushing at them. In the case of China, they have no heart for people at all. And why? It's a product of their religions. When Americans start taking care of their own children, they'll have a better grasp of reality. Because the reality is we help where we can. We help all we can. We are to be merciful, to be selfless. But we are also to do that with our own time and our own money. This is not something the government should be able to step in and take away from us to do with as they see fit. It's a simple, basic, logical premise, I know. We've got a lot of other things we want to talk about. I want to talk to you about Sally Vance and her favorite Christians. And we'll do that in the next recording. Stay with me.